TIFU by getting banned from McDonald's, by user Dorcaskid. For the past few months, I'd been taking advantage of a promotional deal through the McDonald's app, where one can snag their breakfast sandwich for a mere $1.50, a significant markdown from its usual price of $4.89. A steal, right? These deals, as many of you might know, are often used as loss leaders by companies to draw customers in, with the hope that they'll purchase additional items at regular prices. However, my transactions with McDonald's were purely transactional. I was there for the deal and nothing else. My order history was a monotonous stream of $1.50 breakfast sandwiches, and nothing more. To me, it was a way of maximizing value from a company that surely wouldn't miss a few dollars here and there, especially given their billion-dollar revenues. But it seems my frugal tactics caught the eye of the McDonald's account review team. This morning, as I attempted to log in and claim my daily dose of discounted breakfast, I was met with a message that struck me as both absurd and slightly flattering. My account had been banned for abusing their promotional deals. At first, I thought it was a mistake. How could taking advantage of a deal they offered be considered abuse? It's not as if I'd hacked the system or used illicit means to claim the offer. It was there, in the app, available for anyone to use. Yet, here I am, cast out from the Golden Arches digital embrace, all because I relished their deal a bit too enthusiastically. What puzzles me is the precedent this sets. Where do we draw the line between making the most of a promotional offer and abusing it? If a company offers a deal, should there not be an expectation that customers will, in fact, use it? And if that usage is deemed too frequent, does that not reflect a flaw in the promotional strategy rather than customer misconduct? TLDR, my account got banned by McDonald's for exclusively buying their breakfast sandwich using a mobile app deal, making it $1.50 instead of $4.89. I never purchased anything else, just the deal item. McDonald's deemed this as abusing their promotional deal, leading to the ban. TIFU by realizing my friends are a gay couple, by user Significance Early 141. A few months ago I met two awesome people, that I like to play music with. They are both super sweet and very nerdy, and you can clearly tell they are close friends. I eventually developed a crush on one of them, but did not get the impression that he liked me back, even though we had good chemistry. Fast forward to now. I randomly stumbled across them on the street. The guy I liked told me he had just flown back from Bali, and invited me to join him and his friend to try some Balinese snacks. On the way to his house he mentioned that he had had sex with guys on his trip. I was surprised, because I had always assumed he was straight. At some point during the evening I asked my crush if he was gay or bisexual and he said he was gay. He then asked me if I thought he was flirting with me, and I panicked and said no, not at all. Later on in the conversation he mentions something like since we've been dating. And points at his best friend, who is apparently also gay. I can hardly believe it. You guys were a couple the whole time. Yes, you didn't know. We spent the next minutes hysterically laughing about the situation. I feel like such an idiot, and the worst part is that I still have a crush on this guy. Sad face. Edit, they are in an open relationship. TLDR, I assumed my two male friends were straight, but they were actually a gay couple. I had a crush on one of them, so now I am sad. Sad face. TIFU by telling my wife her sister is a 6, by user vegetable_reserve_84. Today, my wife and I were talking about superficial stuff like looks. I mentioned how I think people tend to rate others too highly, often giving out 9s or 10s when most people are probably closer to a 5, which I see as average. I explained that we probably know a few folks who might be a 6 or 4, fewer who could be a 7 or 3, only a handful who might be seen as an 8 or 2, and almost none who could be considered a 9 because perfection just doesn't exist. Then my wife asked me where her sister would fit into this rating system. I instantly said she's a 6, with some extra explanation that it's more towards the higher end of 6. I also mentioned that I see myself as more of a 5 as well, not super attractive but maybe a bit better than average. But my attempt to explain that being a 6 is an okay kind of beautiful seemed to upset her, especially since the sister I'm talking about is her identical twin. The reasoning behind that number is that I don't want to make things weird. Looking back, I realize that these kinds of shallow conversations aren't good for relationships because there is no scenario where I would win and it would eventually lead to hurt feelings. Now, I need to figure out how to make things right and show her that her rating in my eyes are in fact an 11. TLDR, I told my wife her identical twin is a 6 because I didn't want to make things weird. Now she's mad because she feels that I see her as a 6 as well. TIFU by saying woe to the HR coordinator, by user Merdallo. Literally just happened. My office had a St. Patrick's Day potluck and human resources provided the punch. I was sitting at my desk and saw one of the HR ladies walk by with a couple of those big bottles of like green punch. I said whoa, implying that she was strong, etc. Well, she turned around and asked me if I liked her jugs. I think I turned into the Red Lobster. For those of you who may inquire, she's a married woman 10 years older than me. But wait, there's more. She walked back with the other human resources lady who was carrying one of those large food warmers. That HR lady asked if I liked her hot box. I'm dying. But at least I know HR probably doesn't take sexual harassment too seriously, lol. Human resources made sexual innuendo jokes to me while cleaning up after a St. Patrick's Day work party. Not sure if punch was spiked. Happy early St. Patrick's Day. TIFU by confirming for the flight attendant that I am a reverend, by user without Dennis Nedry. TIFU by confirming for the flight attendant that I am a reverend. This happened about this time last year. TLDR, I put reverend on an airline account forever ago when there was no way to opt out of an honorific for whatever reason. On a flight, I confirmed for a flight attendant that I am a reverend and lost my first class seat to help a lady in emotional crisis. I have since changed the account to exclude the honorific entirely since that is now an option. I was across the country, US, attending the funeral of my cousin who had passed from COVID and had used my vacation savings to purchase first-class plane tickets for my journey. It wasn't the fun vacation I had saved for, but I was glad I had stashed enough to shell out for the good seats as I was in an absolutely shit mood and just wanted a little bit of comfort for myself in such an emotional time. I'm on the 4.5-hour section of my trip home and we are just getting up to cruising altitude when I notice a bit of commotion at the back of the plane. I'm not in the mood for drama, so I ignore it and put my headphones on to listen to some true crime podcasts. I'm starting to doze off to murder and mayhem when I get a tap on my shoulder. Looking up, I see a flight attendant motioning for me to remove my headphones, with please hands. I slide them off one ear and she says, "I'm sorry, Miss Dennis Nedry, but you are flying under the honorific of Reverend. Are you a minister of some sort?" A little background time. YAAI back in 2000. My sister was getting married in a secular ceremony and asked me to officiate. So I got my official ordination credentials through ULC, Universal Life Church, for that purpose. Since then, I've actually married 6 couples over the years, so it's been a super handy thing to have. Annoyed that the only non-binary honorifics available when purchasing a plane ticket through most US airlines are Doctor and Reverend, I always choose the Reverend option when I fly. Why we even still require such titles for air travel when you already understandably have to state your gender to purchase a ticket is beyond me, but that's for another day. Back to the flight. I'm confused by why the FA is asking. I'm thinking maybe she has a religious question, and even though I'm an atheist, I do have an advanced degree in religious studies and one in philosophy and can and will happily talk theology most days. Or maybe she has a question about getting credentials like I did. Curious, I answer to the affirmative. She follows up by asking, "Can you please follow me?" and motions to do so. Oh crap, I think, what if someone is dying and they want last rites or something? I'm clearly not a priest, I don't know what I was thinking. Now I'm really confused, and since my headphones are off, I can hear stifled wailing from somewhere behind me. I get up and follow as she and I walk to the back of the plane. At the very last row, there's a woman in clear distress with a few other passengers and another decidedly annoyed-looking flight attendant around her. The FA I'm following turns to me and says, "This woman says she's in spiritual crisis and asked us to find out if anyone on the plane is a minister or deacon or something similar. We looked at the manifest and saw Rev in front of your name and wondered if you could please help calm her down." As she's saying this, the lady, I'd say around 65 or so, looks at me with puffy eyes and a red face, and she just looks so sad. I'm kind of on the spot here. If I say no, I really feel like this woman is going to continue to carry on, making everyone's flight miserable. But at the same time, she's not my responsibility. I'm not the kind of practicing reverend I'm sure she's looking for. I'm a freaking atheist. I feel like I'd be misleading her to step in. There's something very disingenuous about thinking my college degrees could come close to the work a real religious leader does for people. I don't want to get involved in the level of potential crazy that is a public crisis on an airplane, of all places. I really just want to be left alone and not drug into an in-flight telenovela. I look at the FA and tell her I'm sorry, I'm a reverend in name only and I don't think I'm what they need. She looks pretty dejected and says she understands, but really, the woman just needs someone to talk to as she's coming back from her son's funeral. She says I'm free to go back to my seat of course, and she'll let the lady know I can't help her. Y'all, my heart broke for the woman. Maybe it was because I was dealing with my own grief or because the lady just looked so broken, but I really felt for her. I leaned over the seat in front of her and told her I was not a real, practicing reverend, but if she just needed someone to listen to her, I'm all ears. I spent the rest of my flight in her husband's seat and he got to sit in mine in first class. He looked like he maybe needed it more than I did, tbh. Her name was Lydia and she talked my ear off about her son for 4 more hours. We laughed, we cried. I really wanted to just sit in peace in my own seat and ignore the world, but I'm glad I could be there for Lydia. She was just overwhelmed and it all came spilling out when she least expected it. I totally get it. Anyway, had the FA told me what was going on before taking me down the plane to Miseryville, I would have immediately let her know I couldn't help. I wonder if it had been someone with drive in front of their name and a medical emergency was happening, if the FA would have sprung someone in cardiac arrest on a physicist or classical history professor. Sounds like a Monty Python sketch, lol. Edit. Some folks seem to be hung up on the honorific part of my story and are confused on why I didn't just not choose none, so I'll clarify. Some airlines require one to book your ticket. I fly so rarely anymore, I didn't realize that's not a thing so much now, and many US airlines that used to require one no longer do. I made an account with this particular airline well over a decade ago when purchasing tickets to Mexico, I think, and when I did, there was no option to not choose one from a drop-down menu. You literally couldn't continue booking the flight unless you chose one. As I recall, the options were Mr., Mrs., Miss, Doctor, and Reverend. I'm sorry that wasn't clear in the post. For those that assume I'm a man from my username, I've got news for you, username isn't a good indicator of gender. Jurassic Park is my favorite movie and my name is a partial quote from the film. My real name is not Dennis, lol. For those who assume I'm a man because I chose Reverend, I've got news for you, Reverend is a gender-neutral, non-specific term that can apply to anyone, and seeing as I'm technically a Reverend, at the time, it seemed like the best option for someone who doesn't like gender-binary terms. When I made the account with the airline initially, I was a little irked I couldn't just choose no honorific at all and googled if it really mattered. Finding out that it didn't really, for example, my ID didn't need to say Reverend, just like they don't need to have a Mr. or Mrs., and therefore I wouldn't be denied travel if I chose it, I just clicked Reverend and moved on. I really didn't think too much about it and had completely forgotten it was always on there when I flew with that particular airline and the app auto-filled my info. For those saying it's my own fault for trying to be woke, no one likes you. There's lots of subreddits here for you to be nasty, go bother those people. One more clarification. Was I annoyed that I got roped into helping this woman? A little at first, I'm not going to lie. I felt a little ambushed and I was in a pretty dark place, trying to hold it together myself. But I think you're confusing mild annoyance with malice, and maybe that's because I have a dark sense of humor which is reflected in the way I write. Ultimately, I chose to sit with her. I thought my sympathy for her was clear in the post. I had an out, I could have gone back to my seat and put my headphones back on. It didn't seem right to do that, though. Here was this poor grieving mother and my own emotions were so raw because I too was traveling back from putting a loved one in the ground. Her husband was there, yes. I don't know why she didn't find solace in him, but everyone grieves differently and he too was going through it, I'm sure. I don't judge them and you shouldn't either. He probably needed a break and she needed to lean on someone else for a while. I'm sure she would have rather spoken with someone of her own religion, someone qualified to hear her and offer her platitudes and comfort that align with her beliefs, which is why she asked for a real deacon or pastor. That's why I clarified with her that I'm not that person before asking if I would be an acceptable stand-in. She just wanted to be heard, we all do. And I'm glad I could be that for her. She was able to spend those hours telling me all about her son and the funny kid he was growing up. Telling me about him getting busted with pot in college, thinking he was some kind of drug kingpin when really he was just a dumb 20-something. Telling me about his wedding and career. She was able to focus on his life instead of his passing for a spell, and we had a lovely, long conversation. I wouldn't take back my time with that lady for the world. What was initially a foo because I just wanted to be alone with some extra leg room and not focus on my own personal loss turned into something I think was really beautiful, and I wanted to share that. That's all. So all in all, I've learned a few things from posting my story. First, the airline I have that account with no longer requires an honorific to book a flight, so I'll be changing my account details to reflect that. Second, it doesn't matter if you post an experience that seems wholesome as hell, people on the internet will find a way to be nasty to you. I'll remember that. Some of you should remember that I'm a real person and you are free to take your vitriol elsewhere. Lastly, I learned that the vast majority of you folks are awesome, kind people that get what I was saying and understand the irony of the situation. I know it's not technically ironic, I just can't think of another term. You guys made my day, thank you. Final edit real quick, I always choose Reverend when there is no option to leave an honorific blank. I thought that was clear, but looking back at my post, I can see why there was some confusion. Hell, some people choose Duchess and Baron and such when it's available, even when an honorific isn't required. It's really not a big deal, and I certainly never thought it would ever come up since so few actual humans see the name on your ticket. Which is why it's odd to me that some people commented I chose it to make myself feel important. I'm not sure who they think I'm trying to impress. The computer? The handful of real people that see literally hundreds of names a day? Nah, it's not that deep. I just didn't like the selections I was given and chose an ambiguous one that was technically true and then forgot about it, that's all.